Hey everybody, this is John Morgan. I'm here with another one of 2020's great webinars. This one is getting the edge on your competition when it comes to using advanced tips and tricks. So I have probably somewhere around 16, 17 tips and tricks here to share with everybody today. During the webinar today, there's going to be a couple times I'm going to ask you to write a few things down. I want you to write something down right now. I want you to write down www.2020spaces.com/2020. It's all right here, decorative items /. Write that down, and here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I want you to take this after the webinar, not during the webinar. I want you to pay attention. But after the webinar, I want you to take that and type it into your browser. So I want you to type it into your browser on your computer, then I want you to save it as a favorite. And here is why. Let's go ahead and switch over live. I'm going to do everything today live. So let's go into a 2020 plan live. I want to show you something. If you look over here on the right-hand side of my screen, I have 2020 Cloud. You notice that I happen to be working in People right now. And what I mean by that is under the 2020 catalog, that's our decorative item catalog. If I click on arrow here, you'll see that there are lots and lots and lots of categories. Now you can go through and look at these and you think, wow, there's thousands of items. How do I know which ones I want to use? How do I know which ones are my favorites? Well, here's a little trick to this. I go in once a week online and I look at anything new in the 2020 catalogs. And then I make note of something that I think is cool. Like a couple of weeks ago, they put a bunch of animals in, more dogs, more cats, and things like that. And it's always amazing to me how you can spend hours and hours and hours on an awesome design, and you can put a dog in it. It makes everything look even cooler to your client. So how do I find these things? How do I know what's out there and what's available? This is what I do. If we come back over to my browser, so I'm going to come over to my browser, you're going to notice I have an item here called Decorative Items. See that tab? I bookmarked that. And what I mean by bookmarked it is I went over here to my favorites, I clicked on favorites, and if you look right here under my work folder, the very first item is called Decorative Items. Anytime I want, I can click on that and see all the cool items that are in 2020. As I mentioned, I happen to be looking at the dogs just before we started, but I can scroll up and see office furniture, pillows, decorations, curtains. There's literally thousands of items in here. Let me show you a little tip on how to use this. I'm going to scroll all the way to the top. At the very top of this, now we're at the top. At the very top of this, it says, how do you want to filter it? Well, if I click on filter, I can simply go in and choose a category. For instance, I could choose chairs and tables. Here are all the chairs and tables that are available. So you can make note which one you like the best. As an example, if I like bar stool and walnut, I can write that down, and anytime I want, I can just type that in when I'm in my browser in 2020 and go right to that item. I could go through here and say, let's take a look at general items or kitchen items. And you'll see that items that are specific to the kitchen. All of these are just incredible when it comes to the photorealism and really enhance your drawing. You have people, you have furniture, you have items for other places in the home. As an example, maybe we pick garage. Maybe you're doing something in a garage design. We have items to, again, bring out the realism, allow people to connect and actually see them in that awesome space that you have designed. All of these can be found simply by going here. Now let me give you a quick example of how this can enhance your plan. So if we come back over here, we take a quick look. Here's my floor plan. You may notice that I already have an elevation open for this particular plan. You'll see it'll start to render here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. If we come over here to the cloud catalogs, not only can you find the 2020 catalogs here, but your favorite appliance companies, plumbing companies, accessory type companies are going to be listed here. Everything from Blanco to Kohler, from Decor to Whirlpool and Sharp and Maytag, they're all listed here. But if I come over here and choose something, for instance, I always like to add something real to a room, a person, a dog, a wine bottle, something like that, so somebody can connect to it. So if we scroll up here and say, let's go ahead and take this person. I'm going to drag and drop him over here on the left-hand side. I'm going to drag him over to my room here. I'm going to right click and I'm simply going to pop him in right next to my island. Now I did this on purpose because it's going to be in the forefront of the vision of my perspective that I create right now. And if we come back in and take a quick look, I want you to notice how realistic this will become as I start to draw this or as I start to render this. You'll look at little things in here, not just the cabinets, not just the backsplash and countertops, but I want you to notice the realism in the gentleman as he holds his daughter and, you know, they look forward in their brand new condo kitchen. Or you look at the realism at the book down here on the bottom of the countertop. We'll spend a little bit more time on that. But the cool thing about the cloud catalogs is when you add these items to the room, they are photorealistic, which makes your overall rendering look that much better. Just by adding one or two of these items to the room, I don't have to decorate the whole room. Just by adding one or two items, it really, really, truly enhances, makes your plan or your perspective pop. So that was item number one. Let's go to item number two. So we're going to switch back over to our PowerPoint. And we will come back in again, and let's go to the next one. After the first couple of slides, I'm not going to make you write a lot of things, but I want you to write something again. I want you to write panorama.2020.net/pano. Okay, so do me a favor, write that right now. Panorama.2020.net/pano. Now, where that's going to take you, and let me switch over just for a second, where that's going to take you, let's go into my browser again, is to this screen here. And if you do this on your phone, this is what your client would see. If you do this on the phone, this would give you an example of what a 360 rendering would look like for your client. I'm not going to go through all the 360 renderings and virtual realities and all of those things because the assumption is most of you are doing that now. That's probably the hottest way to be able to show a rendering to a client is to be able to send this link to their phone so they can stand in their 1989 kitchen, turn right, left, backwards, forwards, whatever you need, and see their 2019 kitchen. Pretty phenomenal. And again, you would be looking right, you would be looking left, you'd be looking down, you'd be looking up. But I'm not going to try to excite you about doing 360s or using your customer's cell phone or talking about virtual reality because those are things that happened a couple of years ago. The assumption is everybody's doing that today, or if not, you're in the process of doing that. Here's what I want to show you that you may not be aware of. If you go into 2020 and you look at a perspective, okay? So you're looking at this perspective, the gentleman and his daughter in this room. At the top left-hand corner, there's a camera, and that camera has a little green arrow that wraps around it. That is for creating 360 views. What you may not realize is when you click on that camera now, it brings up a dashboard that not only allows you to pick where you stand like it always did, not only allows you to pick the quality like we would always go in and pick high retina quality, but I want you to see that there's something new there. At the bottom of the screen, you see the little Facebook logo. You now have the ability to make these 360s publishable on Facebook. So you can have these, let's say, a folder right on your own Facebook page for your company where prospective clients can come to your page, click on 360s, and they could literally stand in their old, dilapidated, rundown kitchen, hold their phone up to their eyes, and be able to turn and see the best of the work that you've done. What a great way to market your company by having these right on your Facebook page. This feature is now available in 2020 when it comes to the 360s, the panoramic views, the virtual reality views. Now, of course, we always want to encourage our customers to share this on Facebook because we want their friends and family to know how awesome you are in design and be able to bring leads back to you. But step one, you should be publishing your 360s on your Facebook page so that prospective clients have an opportunity to see the great work that you do. Let's come back out of here again. Let's pop back over to our, hold on just a second, I'm confused. There we go. Back to our PowerPoint. So that was number two. Number three, This one's a little bit easy, but it's something that I get questions about all the time. When you print something out from 2020, whether it's a floor plan, an elevation, a perspective, whatever it's going to be, and you look down here at the title block, you'll notice that there's verbiage on the left, there's a logo, verbiage to the right. I get questions all the time. John, how can I put my logo at the bottom of the screen, and how can I change what's written in the boxes? That is actually easier than ever. So if I wanted to show you what I'm talking about the verbiage on the left, the logo in the middle, the verbiage on the right. Now, what we can do is there's actually a place in 2020 where you can get exact directions on how to do that, and you can even download an app that will help you do this easily. You may not be aware of this. Let me switch over real quick back into 2020 and let me show you where I'd find that. Okay, at the top of the screen is a feature called Help. Help is extremely helpful. There's a lot of really cool things in Help that you should be using. If you go to Help, you can learn things about the license that you have. You can actually do live chat with support, all those things. If you go over here to the left where it says what's new, that'll always tell you what's new in the most up-to-date versions of 2020. You can click on it and learn the new features. Watch training videos. That's great for teaching new employees because it takes you from the beginning to the end on exactly how to use 2020. But there's also another feature in here that you may not be aware of. It is called Knowledge Center. Write that down. Knowledge Center. I, as a person who has used 2020 for 25 plus years, I actually click on the Knowledge Center myself sometimes. Now, if we click on Knowledge Center, it will open up a web page and it will show you some of the most frequently asked questions. How do you create a waterfall countertop? How do you use drawing layouts? How do you create title block logos, which I'm going to talk about in a second, cathedral ceilings, designing on Macs, all sorts of things are going to be listed here. Now, if you don't see your topic on that front page, just type it in. Actually, my topic is on the front page, but that's okay. I'm going to show you what would happen. I will type in title block, and then I will click on our little search button. It will bring me to articles. It says right here, the very first one in my highest connection to my search is going to be how to change title block and logo. When I click on this, it will give me directions on exactly what to do. And if you look at the top, it says click here to download the app. I want you to do that. Download the app. And when you download the app, this is what you will see. Let me minimize all of my screens for a second. So let's go ahead and minimize our screens. I have a lot of things open. I want you to notice this button or this app right here. I'm going to move it over just a little bit. Actually, let's move it down here to the middle of my screen. See where it says 2020 title block logo? Block editor. That's what we'll download. If I double click on that, it's going to open up an app and it's going to say, is it okay to open this on your hard drive? And I will say, yes, I trust it. When it opens up, it's actually going to give you a second, options for changing the logo and changing the title block. Now, this is all you have to do to change them. If you click Change Logo, we can go ahead and click on here, and it says make sure that your logo is a bitmap and is 200 by 200 pixels. If I click OK, it'll take me to the next screen. It'll actually ask me what type of logo I want to click on, and I can click on a logo from my computer, which I've already set up one from my company here, where I can actually load that in. Now, if you need to modify a logo, you can simply go into Open with Paint, and that will open up Paint, which is a software on your computer, and allow you to take your logo and modify the dimensions of the logo. So it said it had to be 200 by 200, and when it came to pixels, we can modify that to be 200 by 200. You would simply do that by going to Paint. It shows the 2020 logo. I'm going to go over here and say I would like to take another logo. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to Open. I brought another logo in, and you'll see it right here. Here's a logo that I just brought in. If I click Resize, I now have the ability to resize by clicking on Pixels to the exact pixel size that I need. Now, I have an issue with this. This is an elongated logo. Your logo needs to be a square. So what you may want to do in that case is you may want to go in and simply say crop and cut a square out of your logo and use that instead because it needs to be 200 by 200. If I try to compress this logo into that logo button, it's not going to look very good. So make sure that your logos are bitmaps and make sure that they are square. Now, title block text. See where it says drawing layout, text area to the left, text area to the right. If I click on, let's say, text area to the left, it'll open up a screen in Notepad, and here's the text that's currently in your 2020 when it comes to the bottom of the title block. If I go to text area right, here's the information that's there. You can highlight this and delete it. You can go in there and make changes. For instance, I can say this is the property of John Morgan, and then we'll delete what was already there. And then I can go through and, I can add things. You can't type more than 40 characters per line, but I can go through and I can modify all that. And then when I go in now, if I just leave this as is, I have this saved. If I go into one of my drawings, you'll notice that the title block at the bottom will start off with, this is the property of John Morgan. You're probably going to go in there and say, this is the property of ABC Kitchens. This plan cannot be shared without, without written permission by ABC Kitchens. Or you might provide other details like that. So you have full ability to change everything that's in the title block. I'm going to tell it not to save that because I only typed it halfway. So again, here's how we do this. We simply go into 2020. We go to the Knowledge Center, which actually opened up right here. We click on the button here to download that app. Pretty cool. So let's pop back in here again. Let's go back over to my PowerPoint and let's start from my slide again. There we go. All right, next. Did you know that you can change the multipliers in your software? Meaning, I can show a customer what it's going to cost to sell the job. I can tell the customer, or I can tell myself, I don't want to tell the customer this, how much the job cost. I have the ability to put those multipliers in if I wish. Now, how do I find out how to do that? Same exact way. If I come back to 2020, if I go back over to my Knowledge Center, which happens to be open right here, I can simply come in here and type in rates. I'll type in rates. It says, how do you create or modify a rate? And guess what? Just like when I showed you how to change your title block, it will give you all the directions on how to modify the rates. Now, I'm not actually going to go in and modify rates right now because that would be extremely boring, number one. But number two, I actually have to leave 2020 to do it. I have to go into the catalog area to do it. But I want to show you how you would find the right information to do that. And that is, again, go to Knowledge Center, type in rates right here, and it will give you directions step by step on how to modify your rates. Let's go back over to our PowerPoint again. Let's go to our next tip. All right, favorite tips when it comes to preferences. So let's switch over to 2020 and show you what I mean by preferences. Now, on the left-hand side of your screen, under the File button, there's a feature down here called Preferences. And if you click on Preferences, there's lots and lots of options within these. And in previous videos, previous webinars that we've done, you've probably seen us talk about various things in preferences. For instance, my favorite preference of all, it's one that I do all the time, is if you go to Work Area, and you choose, see where it says display 3D shapes and elevation. If you put a little check mark there, that's what puts the handles, all the door styles and everything on your elevations. I leave mine set like that all the time. I'm not doing that right now because we've done that in previous webinars, but let me show you a couple of other items that you may want to use. First question I typically get when it comes to a screen is, how do I get rid of all the extra dimensions? When you place 2020 on your computer and you start to design, you'll notice that it puts dimensions in for the cabinets, the sink, the refrigerator, everything. There's lots of dimensions. If you take a look at my plan, you'll notice I have only window, wall, and door dimensions, kind of the way you would normally work. Now, if you double-clicked on the floor plan, all right, so let's double click on the floor plan for a second. This is going to take me into the display settings for the screen. And if you haven't been here before, the second tab is called Dimensions. And if I click on the plus next to where it says auto dimensions, I want you to notice that all the dimensions are turned off. You notice all of these are unchecked except for something called construction elements. Construction elements are the windows, walls, and doors. That's all I want on mine. You can have whatever dimensions you want on yours. That's what I'm trying to show you. So let's go back to what the original setting would look like on your computer. I just said turn all dimensions on. I'm going to click apply, and if I move my counter over here a little bit, you'll see that we are just now completely mind blown by all the dimensions that are on the screen. Way, 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 way too many dimensions. So how do you modify this view to be a view like I have? Well, pretty simple. You come back into display settings. You simply go in and turn off all the auto dimensions, and then you simply put a check mark next to construction elements only, hit apply, and then it goes back to the standard dimension like I'm using, okay? Now, you'll notice that my computer's already set up so whenever I draw a kitchen, it's only giving window and wall and door dimensions, right? That is one of my favorite settings because you can save that. So if I go in right now and I say, let's save this setting the way we have it, I'm going to give it a name. And I'm going to call this December webinar. Just because that's the setting for this webinar today, I'm going to go ahead and click Save. If you look over here where it says Schemes, you'll see December webinar is one of my options, as is Joe, as is John's preference, plus all the 2020 standard settings. Now, when we click OK, I have simply changed this one floor plan to have a setting like you're looking at, just basic dimensions. But what I really want to do is I want to set my computer up so that every time I start a plan, it uses my favorite setting. Here's how you do that. You go to File, you pop back down here to Preferences, and under Preferences, there is an option called Catalogs, which is the wrong option. I meant to go to Display tab Schemes. There we go. And you'll see over here it says all no dimensions. I want you to notice where it says Display tab and it gives the names. They're actually the same names that you see at the bottom of the screen. All no dimensions, cabinets. So you can give a different setting to every one of these tabs. As an example, I could have basic dimensions on all. I could actually go to the new tab and just say, I just want to see countertops on a blue piece of paper. And the next one might be, I want everything to be in black so that when I print it out, it only uses black ink in my printer. And then the next one could be lighting and electrical or such. You can set these up to be whatever you need them to be. So let's say we come up here and we say all. You see where it says the scheme is called 2020? That's the generic one. I can come down here and choose December webinar. And what will happen is when I hit apply, every kitchen I do from this point forward will always use my favorite setting, which I called December webinar. You'll notice that in my system, I actually have something called John Morgan preference. Well, that's obviously my preference. So when I'm working in the systems, I set everything as a default to be John Morgan. And then from that point forward, everything that I want to see day in and day out on that screen is always there. I never have to manipulate anything. It looks exactly the way I want. Now, let me give you a couple of other really cool settings that I like. Number 2 in this list is, if we pop down here to wall and construction lines, you may not be aware of this, but if I go to room layout, there's actually an option here called basic window and basic door. And what that means is they're quick options. If you choose basic window, it's going to bring up an option here. So it'll bring up a window, but it's only going to show me one window every time. This is my basic window, meaning if I want to draw something really fast and I don't want to go through a whole windows category, I just click on it, I place this window, that's what it looks like. But you know what? You might want to have a different window. Maybe you don't like mullions in your windows. Maybe you need a different type of window, a double hung or whatever it's going to be. Well, you can change that setting. So if I go to File and we go down here to Preferences, under Preferences, if I go to Work Area, I'm sorry, wrong one, Wall and Construction Lines, see it down here at the bottom, it says Basic Door, Basic Window. It will automatically give you generic widths that you can start with, default widths. I can go to basic window and say, I don't want to use the one with mullions. I'm going to make my default something different. I'll come down here and choose windows. I'll choose a standard window. I'd like to use a white window, and we'll come down here and say we'd like to use a sliding window or an architectural window. I'll say I'd like to use a square window, and here's a list of all the windows that I have available. And you'll see there's more descriptions to the right. So you can actually choose your favorite window to be the default, and this is about making the design faster and easy for you to use. You can set your own defaults up as you work. Now, I can also go in and make a couple of other changes. So let me tell you one of the things I do on my system. See where it says overall settings? There's an option here for auto save. When you receive 2020, the auto save is set up to save every 5 minutes. That drives me crazy because every couple of minutes I look up and I'm having to stop because my computer's saving. Typically what I do is I set my auto save to be every 30 minutes or so. When I'm doing webinars, just because I don't want it to slow me down, I turn autosave off. I'm not recommending you turn it off, but I would tell you 5 minutes is too fast. I would much rather have it save every 30 minutes and not slow me down than have it save every 5 minutes, but that's where you find it. You find it under overall settings. Right here it says autosave. Now the last item I want to mention to you is a little counterintuitive to the way I work. I work in high-resolution photorealistic renderings all the time. Why? I do that because that's what the vast majority of the consumers want to see today. But some of you working with us right now are strictly doing plans for, let's say, multifamily. And you don't need those photorealistic renderings. You just want line drawings. And matter of fact, not only do you want line drawings, you wish 2020 didn't default to a high resolution rendering because you're always having to change it to a line drawing. So I get the phone calls all the time. How do I change it so it only shows line drawings? Well, that's pretty simple as well. If you go into the feature here called rendering performance, you have the ability to change wireframe, hidden line, color, texture, whatever you want in any of these areas. But if you go to the bottom of the screen, see right here where it says mode? Look right here. See where I'm circling? It says mode. And then if you move over to the right, it reads texture. If you're working with multifamily or you're working in an environment where you only want line drawings to begin with, that's what you want the default to be, all you need to do is this. Click on the arrow, choose hidden line, and then click OK. And from that point forward, every time you do a rendering, it will be a hidden line rendering first. You can always switch it to be a color rendering or a texture rendering, but the default will be a hidden line. And this is what I mean. Right now, if you come back and you look at my rendering, my default is to be photorealistic, right? If I want to change it, I have to click on this gear right here, and then I can change it and say, I want it to be hidden line. Now it's a hidden line drawing. Well, instead of having to change it to hidden line, your default would be hidden line, and then anytime you wanted to change it to be a texture drawing, you would simply click on texture, and then you would have a texture drawing. So pretty cool how that works. So let's pop back over here again. Let's go to the next item, which is going to be what I call the infamous box trap. Let's switch back over, and everybody, when I do this, is going to know exactly what I mean by this, especially the newer folks. Okay, on the left-hand side of your screen, you have 3 boxes: information box, placement box, drag and drop box, all 3 listed here. A lot of times when people are new to the system, they start to work and they see a box. They said, okay, I'm done with information. So they click on the X and the box is gone. And then at some point, you see somebody else's 2020 and you go, huh, mine only has 2 boxes on the left and theirs has 3. And then at some point, somebody closes out of the drag and drop box and it's gone. So now you can't even choose cabinets from the left. If you did not know this already, you can add these boxes back in very simply. Now, if you turn your computer off right now and turn it back on, it will look just like it does right now. Those boxes are not there. If you want to add those boxes back in, you will go to the View button at the top of the screen. And see over here where it says Drag Drop? If I click on it, the Drag and Drop menu appeared again. I also turned off the information box. If I click on Information, it comes back again. And it will be there forever unless you turn it off again. Okay? So here's what you want to make sure of. And if anybody, I'm sure there's some people out there right now going, oh my God, I never knew how to turn the boxes on. That's okay. If you want to turn them back on again, you go to View, and this is what you want to write down. You want to make sure you have drag and drop open, the information box open, and the placement box open. Those are the three. Now, part 2 to the infamous box trap. Sometimes you have done this. There's a couple of you out there right now are gasping because you know how hard it is, or you've experienced in the past how hard it is to get these to go back where you want them to go. If I have moved these boxes and I turn my computer off, they do not go back to their original setting. So how do you do that? Well, we've made it much, much easier to accomplish that today. If I take this box and I drag it to the left, see the little button over here with the arrow that points to the left? You notice when I put my cursor on top of it, it actually gives me a little blue shadow to show me where the box will appear. If I let it go, it's snapped into place. Now watch. If I take the drag and drop box over here, you'll see in the center that you have a little, again, blue boxes here. And if you put your cursor on top of each one, it will show you or give you a preview of where that will go. I like the drag and drop box at the bottom. So I'm going to point to the little box down here at the bottom where it's going to show blue. It will snap into place. I can take the placement tool over, and I want that one to be below information. So we'll go ahead and we'll drop that in. There we go. Now I can size these. I can move my cursor to the frames. Oops, wrong button. Hold on just a second. Wrong frame. We'll move it over here to the frame, and I will make that more narrow. Then I'll grab hold of the frame in between each of these. I like to make my information box the smallest. I then like to take my drag and drop box and make it a little bit taller. And there I go. I've placed those. So it's all about aligning with those little ghost squares that appear on the left-hand side of your screen. If you do that, they will snap back into place. Again, I get a question about that probably once or twice a week. Most of the time, though, it's because you're not using the most up-to-date 2020. Make sure you are on the most recent version because little things like that are so much easier in the most recent versions. So that is the infamous box trap. Let's go to the next item. Let's talk a little bit about elevation techniques. You are going to love this. There's a couple of really cool features that have been changed or upgraded in 2020 recently that I'm going to bet that the vast majority of the folks on the webinar right now are not familiar with. So let's talk about the elevation techniques. Let me come back into my plan, and I am going to actually switch to a different plan. So I already have one. It's called John's FAQs. I have some of my favorite things all saved on one plan. So we're going to come back in here, and I want you to notice that I have 3 different elevation types, okay? Now, I'm going to create a bunch of elevations, and watch. First of all, I have nothing open. If I just want an elevation of a wall, I simply double-click in the workspace, and an elevation will open up. Hold on just a second. We'll bring this down, and you'll see there's my elevation, right? Okay. So let's go ahead and minimize this now. And let's move this over so I'm only centered on that area. So that was one wall. If I want to have an elevation of all 3 walls, I'm going to hold the control key down. I'm going to click in that wall, and that wall. When you hold the control key down, that multi-selects. So watch. If I double click on that one and I bring down my elevation again, so let's bring down our elevation, you will see that I actually have all 3 walls in one elevation. So my first elevation was just one wall. My second elevation shows all 3 walls at the same time. Pretty cool, but they're in separate windows. What happens if I actually want them to be all on one piece of paper? Because right now these would be on 3 pieces of paper if we printed. We'll move that back up again. Well, here's how I would do that. Under the layout feature, there's a brand new option called Add Custom Elevation. And here's how that works. If I click on this, I'm going to move down to the screen, and there is a line. See that line? If I take that line and I line it up here on the far left, and I stretch it all the way across the screen, and I click, it's going to give me a little blue space. You'll see right here. See that blue space right there? Could give me a little blue space. And if I look at my elevations again, let's pull this down again. You'll see elevation 1 was the single wall. Elevation 2, 3 separate walls. Elevation 3 actually shows me 2 of the walls, but the middle wall is missing. Why is that? The middle wall is missing because right here, you'll see that we have this blue line. It actually doesn't touch the cabinets on this far wall. So we can change that. I can right-click. I can go to change depth, and I can say, instead of making the depth 27 inches, make it 36 inches. When I do that, the little blue area is going to now stretch out to this wall. And if I come back down here and I take a look, you'll see that I have all 3 walls on the same elevation. So again, elevation 1 was 1 wall. Elevation 2 was 3 walls on 3 separate pieces of paper. Elevation 3 is 1 elevation on 1 piece of paper with all 3 walls. Pretty cool how that works. Now, this is actually my favorite part. I've worked with 2020 for 25 plus years, and I cannot tell you how many times somebody has asked me, how do you get an elevation of an island if there's no wall? I want you to look. I have an island, no walls, right? Here's how you do it. If you go to Add Custom Elevation, you bring the line down. First of all, when you place a line, it's actually facing downwards. So we want to turn this line. So I'm going to take it, and I am going to right-click, and I'm going to rotate it around. So I rotate it the other way, and then I can move it back and forth. Let's slide this over. I'm going to attach it to the back of that wall. And you see the little blue line encompasses the entire island. So again, here's what I did. I dropped the line and I rotated it. Why did I rotate it? I rotated it because these cabinets are facing the opposite direction of this other wall. It encompasses it with the blue lines, and if I look up here now, I need a drum roll. There you go. There's your island. You now have an elevation of an island even though there's no wall. It includes all the dimensions too. Pretty cool. So I had an elevation of 1 wall. I had an elevation of 3 walls, 3 separate pieces of paper. I had an elevation of all the walls together in 1 wall, and then I have an island elevation. All of that by using the Add Custom Elevation feature. Pretty cool. It's one of my favorite new things in 2020. We're going to come back over here to best practices in just a second. So let's switch back over to our PowerPoint. That was elevation techniques. Next, we're going to go to the power of the tab key. Here's what I mean by that. This is really awesome too. So let's come back over here. Let's go back into our 2020. Hold on, I did that way too fast. There we go. Over here on the left, I forgot one thing. I showed you these 2 walls. I actually have a 3rd wall hidden below it. Now here's what I want you to notice. I have a wall. I've made the cabinets 27 inches deep. You cannot see the boundary line on that wall. I get this question all the time too. What happens if I can't select something on a floor plan, or I can't select, let's say, the workspace to be able to create an elevation? So right now, you'd like to create an elevation, but every time you click, it simply highlights a cabinet or the molding or a wall cabinet or the countertop. Here's what I mean by the power of the tab key. I'm going to zoom in on this, okay? You'll see that I have a piece of molding right here that's highlighted in blue. If I let go of the mouse and I look on my keyboard all the way to the left-hand side of my keyboard, okay? There's a button over here or a feature called Tab. If I click the Tab key, you'll notice now that the base cabinet's highlighted. See the base cabinet's highlighted? If I hit the Tab key again, my countertop is highlighted. If I click the Tab key again, that's actually highlighting my wall, which means if I come up here and say Add Elevation and we pop back down our elevation, you'll see that it drew an elevation of that wall even though I never clicked on the wall. So that's pretty cool. So if you have something where you can't select it, don't worry about it. Just hit the Tab key and it will switch in between the items that you've selected. You can go back and forth between any of those items and it'll allow you to select anything you want even though you can't see them. Okay, now let's come back over here to our PowerPoint again. Let's go to some lighting ideas. And in lighting ideas, I'm going to do this pretty quick. I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to my floor plan. And let's go back to the original one. So I'll go back to the original webinar floor plan. Awesome. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about lighting, and I'm going to zoom in on an area right here, all right? We have a perspective right now, and I'm actually going to tilt this down just a little bit more so we can see the countertop. Let me give you a couple of quick pieces of advice when it comes to lighting. There's a lot of cool things that you can do with lights, but you may not be aware of how you can manipulate, put invisible lights in, actually be able to judge how the light dispersion is going to appear on your screen and so forth. Now, I'm going to be very upfront with everybody. I do not spend a tremendous amount of time putting lighting in. What I typically do is I spend my time putting bright or impressive lighting right in the forefront of my drawing. So if I have a big room and I'm going to stand at the end of the island, I focus on the lighting just in front of me because everything else kind of gets blended behind it. So I can do that fast. I can really wow somebody with it, but I'm not having to work all over the room, okay? So let me give you an example of what we're going to do here. I'm going to go over here. I'm in the room furniture catalog. I am going to go over to the button over here called Lighting Fixtures, or the feature called Lighting Fixtures. I'm going to go to Recess Lighting, and I'm going to grab a spotlight, drag it, and drop it on a floor plan, and then I'm going to move it around. Now, as you move around, you'll see little points will appear. Those are snap points. In order to keep the light from snapping where I don't want it to snap, I hold the Control key down and the Shift key at the same time, which means I can move it anywhere I want and just place it exactly there. So I just place my light. The next thing that I do with my light is I'm going to go to the up-down because this light, I have a tall ceiling, so this light is at the top of the ceiling. I'm going to make the light 53 inches off of the floor. Now that's a problem because I'm going to see a light floating right in front of me. So the next thing that I do is I double-click on the light. I go into its attributes. You notice there's a light there. I want to create light without actually seeing a light. So what I'll do is I'll go to Variables. I will come over here to Properties, and right here where it says Display 3D Shape, I'll click on it and say No. Now watch my light. When I click No, my light disappears. I now have an invisible light. So I will have a light source, light will come out of it, but you won't actually see the light. So I made the light invisible. Now, let me show you another little trick too. If you right-click on the light and you go to Light Properties, under Light Properties, you can do lots of cool things. For instance, I can take an individual light and say, let's make it brighter. I'm actually going to make it obnoxiously bright. I'm going to make it 100 watts. I shouldn't be doing that, but I'm doing that because I really want you to see how it appears on the screen. Now, I typically work with my lights to be white, but I can tell you that one of our trainers, Raquel actually goes in and adds color to the light because she can see the dispersion pattern better. And then once she sees the pattern that she likes, she'll go ahead and she'll change it back to be a white or a soft light or something like that. So if I click on this and say, let's make this light red. Sometimes people make it blue. I like to make mine red. Where it says Profile, you can come down here and you can choose all the different profiles that you want. I want a defined light. I want a medium scattered light. I want a bollard. These are all light dispersion patterns created by the lighting industry, not by 2020. We just incorporate the lighting industry dispersion patterns. Now, if I click OK and we come back out, let's take a quick look at this. I want you to notice that over here, as it redraws, let's let it redraw now. As it redraws, you'll see that I have a little bit of a red light here on this book. Really not showing up in much detail yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit. And I'm going to go into Scene, and I'm going to take the lights and I'm going to turn them all the way down. That way we can focus just on the light itself. And you'll see over here that I have a light on this book. Okay, so we'll give it a second to draw. Now as you go through, you're going to see that there's a light pattern on this book. And if you give it a second, you'll see that it's photorealistic, but you'll be able to see the dispersion pattern when it comes to the light. Now, what I want to do though is I actually want to show you how that light disperses. And the book is kind of covering it up. So let's go back over here for a second, and I'm going to delete the book. I'm going to click on it and delete the book, and then I'm going to come back in and take a quick look again. Now, as this starts to show the light dispersion pattern, I want you to notice that this light actually is kind of blocked in the middle, but it ends up and it forms rings on the outside. So you can see how the light is dispersed in that area versus just these great big old white circles on the side. Now let me give you an example of how the lighting patterns will differ. So if we come back out of here again, let's go back in here again, and I'm going to duplicate this light. So we'll take this light, I'm going to say duplicate, I'm going to place it right here, I'm going to slide it over here just a little bit so it's away from that other light so that you can definitely see a different pattern. And then I'm going to take that light, actually let me drag this one over a little bit more. So let's just say we're going to drag it over to here, okay? And then I'm going to take that light and I'm going to go into its up-down because I think it probably popped it to the ceiling. It did, so let's make it 53 inches. And then I'm going to right-click on it and go to its properties. And you'll see this still 100 watts, still red, but I'm going to choose a different pattern. Let's come up here and let's just say we choose the first pattern here, which is more of a focused light. Now, if we come back and we look at our countertop, you'll see that the second light just creates this wide dispersion pattern, whereas the first light was much more focused and creates rings. Now, this may seem like a little bit extra work in maybe what you're doing in your designs. If it is, you don't need to do this. For those of you that are doing the higher end kitchens, big dollar sales and so forth, and you need to spend some time in certain areas creating lighting, creating mood, creating feeling to connect to the client, I wanted to show you how easy it is. And one of the things that like Raquel suggests when she trains is that you make the light a color. That way you can see the light better. And then once you decide on the type of lighting that you want, you simply go back, right-click, and make that light white in the end, and that'll work out much better for you. So those are the options too. So let's come back over here again. Let's go back into our PowerPoint. The next thing I'm going to talk about is material selections. So let's pop into material selections for a moment. If we go back over to 2020, so you'll see right now I have my 2020. If we come back over here, you may or may not realize that you have a multiple view option in 2020. And what I mean by a multiple view option is if you right-click in the middle of the floor plan somewhere, there's an option down here called Show Drawing Layout. If you've never used this before, it is a great way to create a presentation to a client. You can go through and say Show Drawing Layout. Over here, it'll give you a list of all the patterns. I can say, here's a piece of paper divided into 2 sections. There's 2 more sections. There's 3 sections. I could go through my list and create whatever type of patterns I want. I'm going to go with one where it has a plan view on the right and then individual views on the left. So let's go ahead and click OK. And if you give it a second, it's going to build a brand new piece of paper. And if I right-click over here, I can go in and say, let's put a floor plan in. I'd like to have a floor plan. Let's make it fill the whole area. So I choose Extents. I will click OK. There's my floor plan on this piece of paper. So this is a piece of paper right here, right? Now, over here, maybe I want to show my selections. I want to show my tile at the top, my paint color in the middle, maybe my door styles at the bottom, okay? Here's a great way to do that. Let's switch back over to my browser. I have already gone in and opened up some screens. So here is a bunch of tile from one of the tile suppliers. So maybe I am going to use this tile right here. So I will right-click on that tile. I'm going to say Copy. I'll come back over to 2020. I'll then right-click right here, and it says Paste from Clipboard. Click it. There's my tile. Maybe I want to put my Sherwin-Williams paint here. I will go back over to my browser. I will go to Sherwin-Williams. I'll go through and say, I wanted to use this blue-gray right here. That color is called Distance. If I click on it to view its details, it'll actually give me a larger cutaway of it. There it is right here, Distance, Interior, Exterior Paint, Locator Number, gives me all the details, right? Has anybody heard of the little program called Snip? I love the snipping tool. If you've never used it before, just come down here to the bottom and type in Snip. Snipping tool will pop up. I will click Next. I'll pop over here and say, I'm going to draw a little box right around this. There we go. There's my color with all my details. I will hit Copy. I'll pop back over to my 2020 again. Whoops, wrong one. I went to my, there we go. Let's do that one more time. There we go. I will right-click right here, and I will say Paste from Clipboard. There's my paint color. Now I'd like to place a door style. So I can go to my cabinet manufacturer that I'm working with, any of the cabinet manufacturers, Masco, Master Brands, Wellborn, any of the majors, anybody that you're working with. I can go in here and again use the snipping tool and say, let's snip the actual door. So I'm going to pick an inset door. Maybe that was going to be my island. I will click on that. We'll pop back over here to the presentation. I'll say paste. There's my door. You notice that the box that this is in has green squares. It has green squares because I can edit it. If you look at yours and the squares are blue, simply click right here where it says lock, unlock. If I click lock, they're now blue. I can't change them. But if I unlock them, I can grab hold of that line and I can adjust and say, there's my door. I actually have a second door that I want to add. So I'm going to come up here and say add frame. We will draw a frame. Give me 1 second here. I will draw a frame. We'll snap that frame into place. And then I'll go get another door. So we'll come over here and say, let's go back over to the 4 overlay doors. I'm going to come back down here and do a snip again. So we'll say snip. I'm going to capture this door right here. Maybe that's for my perimeter walls. We'll click copy. We'll pop back in here one last time. Sorry, I keep going to the wrong thing. So let's come over here. I'll right click right there and say paste. Voila. I have a floor plan on the right. I have my tile at the top. I have my paint color for my walls. Here are the 2 doors I'm going to use. And the really cool thing about this is this is one page. Remember, I told you to create a whole presentation? If I simply right-click on the floor plan right here, I can say create a brand new tab and go back into it again. Pretty awesome. So I can click on drawing 1, drawing 2, drawing 3, drawing 4, all the way across the screen. Pretty cool. Now, let's come back out of here again. Let's go to our next slide, which is going to talk about how we present. I don't know if anybody's ever done this, but one of the cool things you can do is actually save your renderings in other software. Like I'll save it in a PowerPoint or such. And then when I'm presenting to somebody, while they're talking, I have a good friend in Virginia that does this, while he's talking to you about your plan, he will actually roll the mouse wheel and it'll pop up and have little things written on the screen while he's talking about your new room, how your friends are going to come over and have wine, how your kids are going to do homework there for the next 20 years. This is where you're going to cook the, mix the cookies for the kindergarten bake sale. He does little things like that in the plan. Now, that isn't anything special. That's actually just an action in a program like a PowerPoint. So I saved my 2020 drawing and then overlaid verbiage or things that I wanted to confer to the client, and just simply had it pop up as we're working. That's a great presentation technique. Now, for the last in our standard series, and by the way, anybody hangs with us a little bit afterwards, I'm going to do about 5 minutes of bonus tips at the end. So I'm going to end the webinar and then do 5 more minutes of bonus tips. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about what I call texture tips from Katya. Katya is also one of our trainers. I mentioned Raquel earlier, and now I'll mention Katya here. She does a really great job when it comes to adding textures and paints and so forth. Couple quick things I want you to know. Number 1, I want you to write down seamless tiles, okay? Number 2, I want you to say about the maximum size, 2,000 pixels or below 1 megabyte. And then we're going to talk about paint. So let me switch over here again real quick for a second, but I'm not going to go to 2020. I am going to go here, and I'm going to go to my browser, and I'm going to type in seamless tile. And then I'm going to click on images. Whether you're in Google or I'm in Bing right now, this will bring up images of tiles that do not have seams, which means the pattern is repeatable more easily. And that's the key, is you want to be able to find something that has a repeatable pattern. Now, let's say that you don't have something that has a repeatable pattern and you need to clip it. Maybe you were in the real tile site and there was something in a particular tile and you wanted to clip it. So I'm going to, let's just say we choose this tile right here. I'm going to go ahead and say copy. If you come down here to the browse, there's a program built into Windows called Paint. You saw me use this a little while ago. If I go into Paint I can say paste. There's my tile. And if I needed to, I could resize. This will allow me to change the number of pixels in the tile. For instance, this is pretty good. The way this is set up, this is good. It's repeatable. But if it were not, I can make changes to it. I can make changes to it by either changing the number of pixels, or I could go in here, click on the item, and I could say crop, which would allow me to actually cut a section out of that image. And then I could cut pieces out and use that as I wish. So you have programs like Paint. You might have other types of programs that you purchased. Paint is free and part of your program, but you do have the ability to take tiles and things like that, overlay the image to be able to use them. So if I come in here right now and we pick something, let's say that we pick this tile right here. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say save picture as. It'll pop up here and ask me where I'm going to save it. I actually keep a folder of tiles. I'll simply go in here and click OK. I've saved it. And then if I go back to my 2020 for a second, so let's go back into our 2020. Let's go back to our floor plan. If I look at my elevation right now, so let's go to our sink wall. There's our elevation. If I double click where the backsplash is, I can simply double click on that. And when this pops up, you'll see the old tile that I had here. I can go into the variables. I can click browse. And over here on the right-hand side, I can pick whatever tile that I need. Whether it was a seamless tile that I saved or it was a tile that I cropped, I can come in here and pick that tile and then add it to my list. So I would go to Browse. Give me just 1 second here. I would scroll down and find a tile. For instance, as I was playing a little while ago, see the one called Webinar? I actually did that. That was a seamless tile. So if we come back over here to the seamless tile, I scroll down just a little bit, see if I see it again right away. There it is right there. See this tile? Just before we started the webinar, I actually right-clicked on that tile and I saved it. And then when I brought it into 2020, this is what it looked like. I brought it into 2020. I clicked on it. I click Open. It'll add it. It'll say, do you want it to be normal or do you want it to be a large format? There's my normal. I can determine what scale it needs to be. We can click OK. And then when I look at my image, you'll see that that tile has now been added to that image. We'll come back out of here again. Let's go back into our view and let's turn the lights up a little bit on that. So we'll go back into my view and you'll see the tiles back there on the wall, but it's kind of hard to see because my lights are so low. So let's turn the lights up just a little bit in that room. And you'll see that I actually added that real tile, that real photograph to the tile in the background. I get questions all the time. People ask me, they'll say, hey, John, how did you make that look photorealistic? Well, that was really simple. I actually got a photograph and I overlaid it. Now, here's the last thing that I'm going to do. So I'm going to take this image and I'm going to minimize it. I'm going to take my 2020 and I'm going to drag it over here to the left so it fills the left-hand side of the screen. And then I'm going to go back over to my browser and put it on the right. Here's something that's pretty cool. Let's open up Sherwin-Williams for a second. And let's go in and pick another Sherwin-Williams color. So let's give it a second. So this is going to come through and it's going to load. Let's get rid of that. So I'm in the blues. It could be purples. It could be neutrals. Could be anything. But I'm in the blue section right now. So we're going to come up here. And I'm going to say that I like that blue. Or actually, let's go in and pick, I want to pick something that really shows up. So let me just pick like this bright blue here. That's actually not the color I want to make my room, but I want something to show up on the screen real well. Over here on my floor plan, if I double click on this wall and we give it a second, it's going to open up my properties. I'm going to click Wall Group to highlight everything. I'm going to go to Material and see over here where it says Finish. I'm going to click on Browse. And I'm going to just move this over just a little bit. The same thing that I just used with my tile a moment ago. Let's move this over here. Now, there's a button under User Texture where I can capture a color. This button looks like an eyedropper. If I drag the eyedropper over to Dynamic Blue, what an awesome name, Dynamic Blue, and I let the eyedropper go, see this box right here? Watch what happens. It just captured the blue. I now have Sherwin-Williams Dynamic Blue loaded into 2020. If I click OK, and I click OK again, and we come back and we take a look at the image, I want you to notice the wall behind my gentleman and his daughter over here on the right is now dynamic blue. It's actually blue right under Sherwin-Williams' catalog. I tell people all the time that your suppliers spend a lot of money making sure they have just the right image online. You can simply use the tools in 2020 to incorporate them right into your drawings. How much easier could that be? Pretty cool. So let's come back down here and let's wrap this up. Let's go to the last slide, which is going to be 2020 Spaces. So I want to welcome everybody to join our 2020 Spaces, which is 2020spaces.com/community. Okay, so an awesome place to learn trends, design ideas, and you're not really learning from us. You are learning from other people just like you in the industry. It's a great forum where professionals share with each other. So write that down, 2020spaces.com/community. Now at this point, the webinar is officially or unofficially over because I'm just at an hour. So this is where I'd normally take a break. But anybody who wants to hang out with me for another 5-10 minutes, I'm going to show you a couple more tips. I have, before we get to that, I mentioned the Knowledge Center and training. I mentioned several times actually, Katya and Raquel. We have an awesome training group. So if you want to get more great tips, please register and attend one of our in-person sessions that we have, training both basic and advanced and such. So all of those are available. But for today, because we're in a webinar, I have a bonus round. So anybody who wants to stay an extra 10 minutes with me, I'm going to give you 10 more minutes of stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to thank you for coming. So as an official close, as always, at 2020, we appreciate so much partnering with literally tens and 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 tens of thousands of designers. We truly appreciate partnering with you to help create, better businesses, to better your jobs, to better your results to your clients. So thank you for the time you spent with us today. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Now, for those of you who want to hang with me for a couple more minutes, let's do bonus time. So we're going to come in here, and let me make this full screen. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to switch back to my original floor plan, which is going to be John's favorite FAQs. Let me come back out of here a little bit. So let's move over here. I'm going to do these fast. Some of these, again, you're going to go, oh, my God, I can't believe it was that easy. Okay, fillers. You have a situation where you need to put fillers to the left and to the right, but you have walls on both sides, so the filler doesn't want to place right. So if I do BF3, let me do that again, BF3, I try to drag a filler right here. It doesn't want to snap it in. It wants to put it on the other wall or put it on a diagonal. Now, a lot of you will turn off the boundary lines on this right-hand wall, which means you turn them off, then you have to turn them back on again if there's more cabinets on it. Some of you will move all the cabinets out of the way, put a filler in, trim it to the size you need, and then put all the cabinets back in again. But if you really want to do it fast, simply click on the base 27, come over here to the filler in your list, and if you double-click, it actually snapped the filler in and trimmed it to fit. Now, that only works on the right. So if it's on the right, that's cool. If it's not on the right, here's how I would do it. I would actually double-click and open up an elevation of that wall. So let's bring this down. If you have an elevation and you place fillers in the elevation mode, they will always snap. They will always trim to fit. You don't have to do anything special. So a lot of times when I'm working in rooms, I simply work in elevation mode and put the fillers in that way. Now let's come back up here again. So let's come back up here again. Let's come over to this one, fillers on a diagonal. This one's pretty cool because if you drag a filler over on a diagonal and you try to snap it into place, it always wants to come out here like this. If you notice when you drag the filler over and you try to place in that corner, there's two magnets. If you move your cursor back along the edge of the cabinet, eventually one of those magnets will disappear. If you let it go, it actually trimmed to fit. See that? It lined it up perfectly, which means if I do the same thing on the other side, I move back until the double magnet becomes a single magnet and I let it go, it trimmed to fit. These fillers line up perfectly and I didn't have to do anything extra. All I did was move my cursor back until the second magnet disappeared. So that's bonus tip number 2. Bonus tip number 3. You want to move an island. Go to annotations, line to line. I want to know how far it is from the edge of the countertop to the range. 36.5. I want to know how far it is from the edge of the countertop to the front of the sink base. 39 5/8. Here's how you move the island. If I draw a box around it, I simply held the left button down. I drew my box around it. See over here where it says placement? It automatically highlighted the feature called move. And if you read where it says offset, I can type in a dimension. 42 minus 39 5/8 is 2 and 3/8. If I click the right arrow to move my island to the right, I now have a 42-inch walk-through space. If I want to make this 42 inches as well, 42 minus 36.5 is 5.5. I'll come in here and say 5.5. I'll click down. I now have 42 inches on both sides. Pretty cool. I know some of you use the old method, which was you might put a 42-inch cabinet in, 42-inch cabinet here, you line them up. Man, that takes a long time. I just go ahead and draw a box around it, and I type how far I want to move it. That's all I do. Very, very simple. That was bonus tip number 3. Bonus tip number 4. You've drawn 2 cabinets. The backs are touching one another, but the fronts do not, and you end up with this little pie cut in your countertop, which is not what you want. You want this part of the countertop and that part of the countertop to meet right there. Well, most of you do this. Most of you will right-click, you'll go into the countertop, and you go to Edit Shape, and then you start messing around with this point. You start moving it, deleting it, and you keep messing around with it until it gets close to what you want. Don't do that. Make it exact. Here's how you do that. You right-click on the left line and choose Intersect. If you left-click on the opposite line, they connect. Perfect. Took me 2 seconds. That is tip number 4. So again, I'm going to hit undo and show you what I did again. I simply right-clicked on this line and said Intersect. I left-clicked on the other line. They are now perfect. That was bonus tip number 4. And here is bonus tip number 5. I'm going to move the title out of the way for a second. All right. You would like to build a piece of countertop and sit it on top of this wall, and then you want to shape it. You want to basically extend it to be a 15 or an 18-inch overhang. How do you do that? Well, there's 2 things that are going to be a part of this. Number 1 is drawing the countertop. When I draw the countertop, I don't actually use the countertop program. I use something called running line. I click on it, and then I click where I want to start. So I'm going to click right on this point. I'm going to move up, and every time I get to a point where I need to change direction, I am going to left-click. So I'm going to go back now and trace the inside of the wall, trace the inside of the elbow, come all the way down to the end of the wall. Now I'm going to come all the way back to where I started, and here's the key to this. I left-click to start there. I need to left-click to finish there. I want to close that shape. Once I do that, I can right-click, and I'm done. Now, at this point, and you need to have your readers on or something because it's a little bit small. If you see right here, there's actually a little green dot here, here. Every corner point, there's a green dot. If you right-click on one of those green dots, there's an option here called Make 3D. Because all you did was trace so far. It'll pop up, and it's going to ask you, what do you want to turn that into? And I'll say, I'd like to turn it into a countertop. Countertop, I'm always going to choose square foot top. And I will always choose the square foot top at the bottom of this list because it'll create a countertop without seams. We'll double click on it. It turns it into a countertop. Now, once you turned it into a countertop, you want to right click again. I'm going to go to up down. This countertop needs to be 40.5 inches off the floor because my wall is only 40.5 inches tall. And then at that point, I can edit it. This is the part you're really going to like. I'm going to go to edit. Now, most of the time, people click on this line and just start stretching the line. Then they start messing with points, and they end up with this little bit of a funky-looking shape, but it's close enough. We're going to make this exact again, just like I did with the intersect. This command, though, is called move and intersect. And watch. If I want to move to the left, you'll see right here my counter says it's a negative. If I move to the right, it's positive. I want to move to the left 15 inches, or let's say 18 inches. So I'm going to type in minus 18, enter. I'm then going to take this line. I'm going to say move and intersect, minus 18, enter. And then I'm going to take this line, and I'm going to say move and intersect, minus 18. Enter. I'll click accept my changes. We'll come back out of here. Let's take a quick view of this. Now I'm going to have to change my view around a little bit because I have this huge drawing with just a mess of different options on the screen. So let me see where it positions me, and then we will come back out of here. There we go. You see right now, I built the bar top, and it is perfect. That was bonus tip number 5. With that, I am going to officially end the webinar. And I'm going to give you our contact information, 2020spaces.com. Our phone number is 866-698-2020. As always, I can tell you for everybody at 2020, we appreciate you so much and are just so proud to partner with each and every one of you. So if you have any other questions, please reach out to us, 866-698-2020. Of course, go to the website, go to the webinar section, look at all of our other great webinars. And with that, I'm going to wish everybody out there an awesome rest of your day. Thank you.